Right guys, hello, Luton, back again. Before I say anything else, I'll just say that I know people are sick of these reveal breakdowns. I always hate the near obligation to make them, but you know me and how I approach things, so I've at least attempted to create some thoughts around this that are my own and not just, stating the obvious or slowing the video down frame for frame and telling you what you're seeing. So anyway, speculation is over, now the speculation can begin. The Battlefield 1 reveal introduced us to the new Battlefield theme, World War I, or at least DICE's artistic, slightly Hollywood interpretation of it. So at the event itself, I wanted to enjoy the evening, but at the same time I was very aware of how damaging hype can be. It's happened to me and I've seen it happen to game releases, so I wanted to ensure that I kept my head straight. For those watching online, it probably didn't quite have the same impact it did for us at the reveal, as the power of that sound in the cinema, the metallic weight of tanks, shells, battle, it was literally running through the floor and into us, as it does in a cinema. The image this conjured for me was what epitomised the Great War, man versus machine. It was the first war where men had faced the power of machines and not simply one another. Land ships, aircraft, dreadnoughts, artillery barrages, it was a horrific war, and many battles were just a slaughter. Now, while the trailer itself was quite intense, they are certainly taking, as I say, an artistic interpretation of the horror of the First World War, which, to be honest, is fairly understandable, as some quotes from soldiers who lived through that time could easily be taken from something like a horror story. So what does the choice of setting mean for Battlefield? Is it good or bad? As I said on the night, I feel cautiously optimistic. Why? Mainly because there was a lot of talk about team play and objective importance. I managed to glean from speaking to people at the event that what this is really going to mean is that you're going to gain more by working together in your squad, as they said, and playing the objective. Those who do not will, to be some extent, penalised for not doing so. But these details are very vague. I remember I so often get called out in the comments for my videos, people saying, Luton, you can't force people to play the objective. Well, of course, you can't force people to, but then I never said we should. What I wanted to see Battlefield, do now is lead by example, carrot, not the stick. To lean as a game more toward objective play, to say to people, hey guys, here is what you should be doing. And again, just to back that up, on the reveal night, I spoke with both Alex and Lars G. Both of them agreed that this is what you want to see in Battlefield. And this is direct from the guys who are, heading up DICE and Battlefield 1. They are saying, we want to see more objective play. This is what you should be doing. So all those people who are always saying like, hey, man, it's not all about the objective, kind of is, because that's what you're meant to be doing. Realistically though, we really can't know how this is going to translate into the game. So until I see some real hands-on gameplay or get to play the game in a multiplayer environment for myself, it's going to be hard to know any further about how this is really going to play out. And maybe there's some details about how the team play works and the points work and other things that are going on there that we really don't know, hasn't been said. There's loads of questions. One thing that I have learned from working with developers in the past for the last few years is that closed test environments rarely play out as public live ones do. Some of the closed events I've been to ended up being actually the best games I had ever had because the whole room was full of YouTubers who were really try-harding because they wanted good footage. In a beta environment, much of the same is true. People really want to just test things out and look around, so you're probably not going to get like a true sense of what people's real focus is in the beta either. So what this all means is that it's going to be incredibly hard to gauge just how much they are leaning towards team play and then how that translates into actual gameplay until we get hands-on with the game live. It also means that based on that, I really am not going to be able to tell you in any real terms if I think this game delivers the focus on team and squad play that they've been talking about, not until we get into some real public games and see what's going on there. Still though, one thing that I do plan is that after release, if they enable custom servers, which I sincerely hope they will do, that I will yet again host an objective-focused server community. One that I really plan to lead with more frequent game nights, and that I hope will be able to recruit admins from the community this time, so as to really push it as a place to come for hard objective games right from the start. If Battlefield 1 has lent towards team play so that it benefits those who play with a squad and look to the objective, this means we'll certainly have even more tense, hard-fought games than we ever did before. I'm skeptical though about just what these changes in team play mean in real terms. People like myself and Battle Nonsense have both pretty much agreed in our ways that tweaking to scores is a good start, but it's far from what would be required to see a fundamental shift in player attitudes. Still, as I have discussed in the past, maybe this game will demonstrate that this is something which is just really off the table at this point. Quite honestly, if they just lean the game towards team play but don't follow through, that's just going to be enough for me at this point. I'll take that. Beggars can't be choosers after all. So now, as I say, without patronising you all by breaking down a trailer that you're more than capable of watching for yourselves and probably have watched videos about already, what are the key points that I took away from the Battlefield 1 reveal? A lot was spoken about the physicality of the game. I did feel that in the trailer. The Great War was one which for the first time, as I said before, really threw men against machines, and that was certainly apparent, not just from the images we saw but also the sound. I've spoken many times previously about the importance of sound in games, and if Battlefield 1 delivers in-game what it did for the reveal, I'm going to be very happy indeed. The sound was deep, gritty, and for me in the theatre, it cut right through you in some parts. The huge land ships, which have been, an intimidating weight of presence, kind of makes you think, Jesus, get away from that thing. That's how it should make you feel. There would have been sights that had never been seen on the battlefield, and fear around them should be culpable. You should fear them. You shouldn't be thinking like, oh, there's a tank, I'm just going to bang it down. You should be scared of them. We've seen that in the infantry. We're going to be able to use explosives to take out these monsters. There have also been other types of explosives available, things like sticky weapons to throw at them and slowly maybe damage them over time, or damage one part of them. And also in the trailer we have eyes on what appears to be an anti-tank rifle. These were very first used in World War I think it was like 1918 when I looked it up. This thing would have been impossible though to fire from the hip, so it's going to be interesting to see if they've actually placed some limitations around that in game where you have to set it up to fire and you can't just run around and shoot it. I hope they have done that. Another question for me when it comes to tanks is destruction. Now these vehicles were huge. We have already now seen in the aircraft stuff in the trailer that they're probably going to have some kind of compartmentalized damage, enabling you to blow off sections of them in order to cause damage or slow them down or disable them in some way. So we're going to see this in tanks as well. Can you maybe blow off a track or destroy one of the side guns, which maybe opens a weakness for infantry to finish that job off? Could you blow up the main turret? It remains to be seen, but I really hope so with that as well. Considering the destruction has been increased generally, and they've spoken about this from what we've seen in aircraft, I think it's a strong possibility that we'll see this kind of thing, and maybe it's going to be a general system across the board, which is very exciting. You think of even some of the more lighter vehicles, destroy one of the wheels, it doesn't run so good, things like that. Another thing to consider is ground to air. Now, I doubt we're going to see necessarily any specific ground to air weapons, certainly no lock-ons, so pilots are going to be thankful for that. However, what you may find is that standard guns are going to inflict far more damage to aircraft than we have seen in recent games. For anybody who remembers in Bad Company 2 Vietnam, you could take out a helicopter with nearly any weapon, pistols, including things like an Uzi. This is because those helis had almost no armour, so it stands to reason that an aircraft in Battlefield 1 will have a similar setup, considering they're made from wood and canvas. If that were not the case, it would be pretty irritating. And this leads me on to another point with the aircraft. It also would make sense that as pilots are basically sitting in a vehicle with no protection around them whatsoever, that you'd be able to very easily shoot the pilots and gunners out from the ground and in the air. I think pilots will face something they haven't felt before, which is feeling genuinely threatened from all sides and not being able to do just a perfect slow fast turning circle. That's not going to be enough to save you now. My last point to make is that in this trailer we clearly see those large air balloons over the battlefield. People remember these from Battlefield 3's air superiority mode, so will this be making a return in Battlefield 1? I would hazard a guess that it is, especially considering the very different flight mechanics and threats we're likely to see in Battlefield 1. It might actually be enjoyable this time too. It also suits the setting as well, because in the First World War there was that kind of separation between ground and air. You had the kind of air flying going on with the Red Baron and all this kind of stuff up in the air, and then you had the guys in the ground. So having air superiority actually makes a hell of a lot more sense in Battlefield 1 than it ever did in any other previous Battlefield. With that in mind though, I hope that they do something about flight ceilings, because the mechanics for stalling your aircraft being stuck vertically in the sky in Battlefield 3 were very annoying indeed. This was exploited a lot in this mode by people who wanted to make your life a misery by sort of faking up and getting you caught out or whatever. Please ensure that this is fixed if this mode returns. Either increase that flight ceiling or create some kind of mechanic so that you easily pull out of a stall and you don't just get stuck in the sky. Horses appear several times through the reveal trailer. This for me though, it's a fairly contentious topic. On the evening of the reveal at QA, the horses were brought up several times and they dodged around the details, but they dodged around a lot of details. But a tank or a vehicle, that has a fairly understandable movement pattern. But horses, they're a totally different ballgame. Their movement, their manner, and how they interact with terrain are all critical in order to make them not look frankly ridiculous in-game. And believable. When riding over terrain, you don't want your horse to be bouncing around and tracing terrain over objects. You want it to connect and appear real with the environment. Similarly, animations of riding, collisions, death, they're all equally important to make it believable and immersive. Basically, there was a lot more to do in making a horse appear real and not just a silly feature. There are also questions about what's their purpose going to be. Will you be able to trample enemy, kick them, shoot while mounted? Lots of questions around horses, but nothing to conclude on this right now, so we've got to just wait and see. It would be great if they've implemented it well. If they haven't, it could become a problem, if not a bit of a joke, so quite a risk. A lot has been spoken about class designations. I'm really not greatly fussed by the classes, to be honest. You can pick a class, you do your job. Engineer and Assault have been amalgamated, medics are back, support, sniper recon is there, of course, so people can make videos about best sniper and, 1/5 of your team can sit on hilltops imagining they are the American sniper. So it's all usual suspects. As I said before, it's not what has changed with the classes, but what the team play can encourage from them. Still, maybe some of these tweaks, especially medics, are going to help people think a little bit more about what it is they're doing towards other teammates. Destruction. Now, from the small elements we could garner from the trailer and the reveal, it sounds as if they're going to be just what people wanted. The fact that other YouTubers at one point were saying there was too much destruction, I think that's a very encouraging flag. I remember back in Bad Company 2, during many games actually, people could just flatten areas of the map nearly, and in doing so made it very difficult to make some progress. So I'm thinking what we're going to see is more localized destruction, where instead of scripted buildings collapsing, we see perhaps sides of buildings blown out, and then other sections can be taken away before the whole thing eventually falls apart or whatever. I said this kind of stuff back in another video, where when I was talking about what I wanted to see in a World War II game was sides of buildings being taken out from tank shells and then that debris falling out the other side of that building from the shockwave falling down onto infantry. We saw this kind of thing in Sane Crossing Battlefield 3, where buildings above could kill players below. So in situations where this can happen, I hope it does. Just speak briefly about gas and gas masks. Now, somebody who has played a lot of Verdun, you cannot underestimate the power of gas, especially in the trenches. It makes your visibility incredibly poor. If done right, we should expect your gas mask to possibly even inhibit audio around you. It's claustrophobic, it's terrifying. I hope more than anything we see gas from grenades or artillery spread widely and last for a decent length of time. The smoke grenades in Battlefield previously up to this point, generally they don't spread or last long enough for me. I hope this changes in Battlefield 1 so that gas becomes a terrifying and also useful tactical tool for players and not something that can just be easily avoided. Okay, so let me lastly speak on something I think concerns a lot of people, and that is range of engagement. Many of you have been expressing to me concerns that in Battlefield 1, because of the focus on that close quarter battle with melee weapons and in general the limitations of older style weapons, we're going to see a more closed and close range battle system that does not necessarily feel like a traditional Battlefield game. Well, I have to tell you, I simply don't think this is going to be the case. They've got plenty of vehicles in there, we've got big maps that we've seen already, so for starters, they have put the focus on the melee system and the new cool tools to use there. I personally think though that this is just more marketing than it is literal focus. Yes, melee looks brutal and awesome because it's like, but really I think until we see maps, it's very difficult to judge, how frequent these kind of situations are going to be for you. 9 times out of 10, if you've got rounds in the gun and somebody's charging at you, how quickly do you think they're going to be able to reach you before that bullet kills him? I'd imagine generally the shooter is going to win. Another big concern for people is the actual melee animations as well. Now, a bayonet charge or any melee action, is that going to be something that you can quickly cancel, or is it going to lock you into a horrible animation where you're invincible for the duration, but somebody's standing by waiting to kill you the instant it's over, e.g. Doom, e.g. Battlefield Hardline, and so on. Locked-in melee animations just have no place in a AAA multiplayer FPS. They are incredibly dangerous, and whilst they look cool for a moment, over time that novelty is lost and it just ends up being a really big negative. I seriously hope they've considered these factors when designing the melee system so it does not become a very bad thing for Battlefield 1. Anyway, sorry to finish on a negative, but that is a big one for me. As for the rest of it, I actually think it's looking pretty good. The environments, the sound, the talk of objective and team play, the creativity of weapons, the destruction, the localized vehicle destruction we're starting to see, I think it's shaping up really well, and I look forward to discovering more about the game. As I've said throughout, this Battlefield is a big deal for me. I've been supporting this franchise for years, and a lot hinges on how this game is balanced and designed. Tell me your thoughts, guys, about Battlefield 1 in the comments. The next episode of Below the Line is surely going to be a good one. Thanks for watching. See you next time.